Hi guys, so it's not news that Boris Johnson is a liar and a charlatan, but when he does lie, I think it's important that we hold him to account. Now, I want to show you this interview from the 27th of November 2019. Boris Johnson attacked the Labour Party for the suggestion that the NHS would be up for sale, the NHS would be part of any trade deal.
This is a complete diversion, that the NHS under no circumstances will be on the table for negotiation for sale. Look at what we're doing with the NHS. We're funding it.
Now, if you didn't hear, let's just hear him once again.
This is a complete diversion, that the NHS under no circumstances will be on the table for negotiation for sale. Look at what we're doing.
So under no circumstances will the NHS be on the table for sale. Boris Johnson saying in 2019. This is before the pandemic. This is before he went into the hospital and he availed of the services that the NHS provide. Now let's jump to January the 19th, 2021. Tory MPs reject amendment to protect NHS from international trade deals. Conservative MPs have been branded disgraceful after they voted down an amendment to the trade deal which sought to ensure the NHS is excluded from future trade deals. MPs voted against the amendment to the bill that sought to protect the NHS in July 2020, but held a second vote today, the 19th of January, after the House of Lords backed it in December. MPs voted 357 to 266 against the amendment today. MPs also voted against an amendment to the bill which sought to ensure that Parliament is able to scrutinise trade deals before they're signed by the government. Now, I talked about this on the live stream as well, how the government don't want Parliament to scrutinise trade deals. Just think about that for a moment. MPs, Conservative MPs, voted to have less power to not be able to scrutinise a deal. So if Boris Johnson brings back a deal from the United States, for example, Parliament will not be able to scrutinise it. Parliament will have no say. Boris Johnson is basically ruling by decree here on a trade deal. Now, if a trade deal was good, surely you would want Parliament to scrutinise it. You would have no problems Parliament scrutinise it, even if you have an 80-seat majority. You know, if Boris Johnson didn't have an 80-seat majority, if it was it was on a knife edge, you could sort of understand him not wanting MPs to scrutinise it. But he has an 80-seat majority and he doesn't want his MPs to scrutinise the deal. Why? Because he wants to, in two ways, he wants to push through things that he doesn't want the public to know about. I talked about this on the live stream, for example, chlorinated chicken and hormone-treated beef and other problems, other issues. But it's also to protect MPs. Because if MPs have to scrutinise something, there's a risk that the public will find out that their MP is voting for something that is not good for the public. If the MP says, look, I had to just vote, I didn't have a chance to read it, it gives them a bit of cover. But this is not democracy at work. Now, once again, back to the point of the NHS being up for sale. Let's hear once again what Boris Johnson said back in 2019.
This is a complete diversion, that the NHS under no circumstances will be on the table for negotiation for sale. Look at...
Now, I said at the time, this is a lot, like, how can you say that? At the time I said Boris Johnson is going to try and work out a trade deal with the United States. The United States is the larger entity. The UK is much smaller, especially now since Brexit. At the time I said, they'll be desperate to get a trade deal because they've left the European Union. It would be difficult to trade with other countries. It'd be difficult to trade on the same terms as being a member of the European Union. So they will accept whatever the Americans give. To say that the NHS is going to be off the table and then here in January while still in the middle of a pandemic, they're saying, yes, we're going to allow the NHS to be part of any trade deal. And then to reinforce that problem, reinforce that issue by saying, we're not going to allow members of parliament to scrutinize a deal. So the NHS is back on the table during a trade deal. Whatever happens to the NHS, MPs will have no say, basically. They will not be able to understand how is this going to affect the NHS? What parts of the NHS are going to be sold off to American companies? MPs will not be able to understand which parts, because they won't be allowed to scrutinize it. This is a double whammy, the idea that MPs can't scrutinize it and that the NHS is up for sale. Now, the NHS, parts of it have already been sold off. But this is just a long road to complete privatization of the NHS. We've seen, and I've talked about this before on the channel, how Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock continually congratulate the private sector for what they have done during the pandemic. Yes, the NHS is doing a great job, but what about all these private companies? Serco, Pfizer, all these non-NHS, the non-NHS that is doing such a great job. You know, the private sector, we couldn't do it without them. Remember, we should thank them for the tireless work they have put in to fight this pandemic. These are private companies. They're for profit. They're doing it for their bottom line. They're not doing it because they love humanity or something like that. They're not doing it in the public interest. They're doing it because in some cases they have to, or in other cases because it's profitable. Boris Johnson is a liar. Now, whether you agree with Boris Johnson or you disagree with him, you have to accept that he has been lying to people all along. I hope that the public will eventually wake up to this. I hope that even with his 80 seat majority, that he will be held to some account, that MPs will, even if they can't scrutinize the deal, they will vote against it because they can't scrutinize it. Because why would you vote for something that you don't know? You know, it's a box, a mystery box. That's what Boris Johnson is going to present to Parliament, to MPs. Here is a box. What's in the box? I'm not going to tell you. You have to vote for it. But how can I vote for it if I don't know what's in the box? Don't worry. Believe me. Believe Boris Johnson. He knows what's in the box. He knows what's in the box is good for the country. And if you, after Brexit, if you continue to put your trust in someone like Boris Johnson, then you know what's in the box is going to be not in your benefit. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?